Hey everyone, and welcome back to another chapter review. Today we are doing 1065, so it's a pretty big chapter. While we are really rocketing up to 1100, I think that's going to be a very cool milestone. But anyway, today we've got lots of Vegapunk information, so let's get into it. Before we get into the actual chapter today, the color spread has really caught my eye this week because it's very, very interesting. Film Red promotion with Uta in the middle, Luffy on the left, Shanks on the right, and just kind of a lot of the crew of the Redhead Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates kind of opposing each other across the poster. So it's very, very cool. A few things that kind of really stick out to me here. Number one, why does Uta have black wings? Is this something I've just completely missed from before in the promotional material? I've not seen Film Red yet. Maybe I should get on to watching that. I don't know if do we have that here? I don't think we have that here yet. So I'll get onto that at some point when it becomes available. I'm pretty sure in the first promotional materials we saw, she had little wings that were more like Skypian wings or Birkin wings or something like that. So she did have small but white wings originally, if I remember right. But this color spread, she's just got full-on Lunarian wings. So I don't know what that's about. Maybe it makes more sense if you've seen the movie. The next thing I want to touch on is Franky and Building Snake from the Redhead crew, which there's just some interesting parallels going on here because we have Usopp and Yasop, opposing each other in the poster, and next to them are Franky and Building Snake. And the thing that's kind of odd about this is, well, Usopp and Yasop are father and son, so maybe there's something going on similar there with Building Snake and Franky. I mean, the guy's got building in his name. If not, his first name is Building, so that would be pretty apt. But also, if any of you have read the TCB for any amount of time, you'll know the first color spread or image or whatever that is with Luffy and Brook and Robin and Franky on it, they kind of have that gangster aesthetic to them and the lollipops everywhere. I don't really know what that's about or if it's an official image, but it's been there for a while. It's quite cool. And in that image, Franky's drinking cola, very unlike him, but he's also holding the cola up in a particular way, and he's got a neck tattoo of what looks like a dragon there, which I thought was very interesting because when we saw Building Snake in Marineford, he had the same kind of stance to him, if I remember right, as well as the dragon tattoo, which is like his main personality as far as we're aware so far. So I just think that's quite interesting. There's two threads now that maybe point towards one of the Straw Hats being fathered by another one of the Redhead Pirates crew. So that would be quite interesting. But yeah, just a little bit odd. And then the third one is Sanji and Oven, which I've not seen Film Red yet, but why is Oven there? What does Oven have to do with either of these crews? And why is it so important that he even gets like full billing next to Sanji in this color spread? That just seems really weird. I did a little bit of Googling and it does seem he is in Film Red to some capacity, but he fights Franky in the one clip that I saw or the one image that I saw. So I don't really know what's going on there. Why is Oven here included with these two other crews? Nobody else from any other crews that I noticed was included here except Oven. So that's a little bit weird. But anyway, let's move on to the chapter because a lot of stuff has happened. A lot of stuff is happening in all of the chapters lately. It is huge. But, started the arc building. So let's go. So the first thing that we kind of cut over to in the research stratosphere or the lab stratum in Egghead, which is the island of the future, that's important, very much the island of the future, is that Zoro and Brook stayed behind because they know that if you're on a government island, the main people are going to go out and get caught, and then they're going to need someone to bail them out. So at least they have the option, or rather the ability of hindsight now, and Brook and Zoro decide to stay behind for the inevitability of someone being captured and needing a strong person to come in and bail them out. So that's why they decided to stay there, which is quite cool. And while they're on here, they just decide to have some tea, which is normal for Brook, but Zoro just is like, yeah, why not? I mean, I'm here. So they sit down to have some tea, and Karibu comes around the corner and just says, hey, I need to talk to you guys. Oh my god, I'm still here. I know that, I kind of asked you to drop me off at an island that isn't Wano, but I didn't really think we'd be going to, I don't know, a government island. So do you think maybe we can work something out here? And Zoro goes, oh, you're still here? I didn't even notice you. Oh, you helped Luffy. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Anyway, bye. See you later. Like, completely ignores the guy, which I don't know. I mean, that's not the smartest move ever, but I think for Zoro's sanity, that's the best because as we saw with Luffy and Udon, if Karibo's around you, he's just going to keep pestering you until he gets to a position of power of some kind. So I don't know where Karibo's going from here. He's probably just going to be, worming his way around the island trying to destroy something or ruin something or get in a huge amount of trouble. But he's inevitably going to be somewhere incredibly important, which really bugs me because I really dislike Caribou. But he's here and he's confirmed to be out of his barrel and he's now just kind of going to be wandering around Egghead. I assume the first people that are going to find him are going to be Aegis Zero because they're coming onto the island and everyone else on the island is trying to go more centrally. So I think that he's probably going to bump into Lucci and Stussy and Kaku at some point, and either try and wrangle some kind of position to get him off the island, or they're just going to arrest him because he's a wanted pirate. So, yeah, we'll see where that goes. But Caribou's back, so that's cool. So we see that Vegapunk has built quite the number of amazing inventions. I mean, we already knew that. He made a dragon before, he made a devil fruit, he made so many amazing things. He made a lightsaber sword, like that's a lightsaber sword, lightsaber, which is really cool. But here he has a door that is solid unless you need to walk through it. And I have no idea how this works because they can just seem to pass through it and then Usopp turns around and he can knock on it because, it's a steel door. So I don't know what's going on there. The thing that Vegapunk Lilith said is you should never let your own senses dupe you. And this is a lot of what Vegapunk has been saying now because when we met Wrath, which was Atlas, the kind of thing that we learned there was photonic gloves and how they can punch these things that Luffy just went right through. And it was kind of like the border between reality. And I think it's the very same kind of thing there. Vegapunk has got so much knowledge and ingenuity and experience with building things that he's really started to blur the line between reality and fiction because he can have a giant hologram dragon and a giant hologram ice cream sundae, which to normal people, Luffy's not a normal person, but to other people, that's just a hologram. It can't really hurt them and he can just go right through it. But Vegapunk has photonic gloves, so he can punch the dragon made of light, which is, that's just madness. But how would that apply to the ice cream? Does photonic gloves mean you can eat the ice cream? Does it mean you can punch the ice cream? Where does the blurred reality really go to? It doesn't stop here because all of these crew members just go straight through the steel door and then it's solid behind them. So maybe it's some kind of photonic thing that when you pass through it, it then enables the photonic gloves kind of technology, which turns it into a steel door. That's the best I've got for now because that was amazing and really cool. And escalators. He's got moving stairs. The man's a genius. So there are a few amazing things here. And it is also mentioned when Frankie asks, how do you power this? Something about fire. It was, you could say the whole island runs on fire. That's very unusual. How does that work? Why does that work? Where does that come from? And what is this about an eternal flame or building your own sun? The thing that is just screaming at the back of my mind from this is Entei, Flame Commandment, Ace's huge making a sun technique, because he has the Mera no Mi. And I know that Sabo now has the Mera no Mi, but also Vegapunk knows the revolutionaries, so surely he could make a stop and he could extract the flame powers and make his own sun and eternal flame. That would be really cool. I don't know why he hasn't done this. But it's Vegapunk. He put the Pika Pika no Mi's light lasers into the pacifistas, into many pacifistas. So he can replicate Devil Fruit abilities. Why did he not think to get his hands on the Mera no Mi or the user of the Mera no Mi, or even Oven, and then just create infinite heat through devil powers? It seems really weird that Vegapunk is stuck on this for some reason. So there's probably something more there, but it's very unusual. So here a lot of really big things start happening. We meet another Vegapunk. This is Edison. And he is immediately starting an experiment on them by just opening the doors to Seraphim Jinbei, which is really cool to see. Very concerning though. And we also know that now Vegapunk's Seraphim have particular numbers. So we saw Mihawk and Boa's Seraphim, and they had the little code on them, but we didn't really clearly see what their number would be because that was giving away the game too early. We now see that Jinbei is number 4, so there is probably a very sharp amount of logic that determines the numbers of these seraphims, but that also probably means that there's only one of each of them. It seems very weird to have just Seraphim 04, unless an 04 is a kind of Jinbei, and then you have 1-4 or 2-4 or 4-1, but it doesn't seem likely. It seems with the scheme that we've got here that there is one Seraphim of each warlord, which is still ridiculously powerful as we see here. But that is not the most important thing we learn here. The most important thing we learn here is that Vegapunk can transfer and give the abilities of Paramecia fruits to these clones, because this Jinbei has the Swim fruit, Senor Pink's fruit, which is insanity. To give a Fishman Lunarian hybrid clone of a warlord the ability to swim through land and control the land as if it were water is insanity. I don't know how I didn't think of that. I kind of assumed that you couldn't transfer Paramecia powers in the same way that you can transfer Logia powers and Zone powers, but it's utterly doable. It's entirely doable. It's still just a soul, I guess, the soul of swimming. But yeah, he's transferred it. Where did he get the Paramecia abilities of the Swim fruit? That's a bit of a question. We know that Senor Pink was locked up in Impel Down. Did he specifically request a blood sample from an Impel Down prisoner? Doesn't seem super out of the realm for Vegapunk to get. Did he meet Senor Pink before? Was the Swim fruit there before Doflamingo got it? So many questions. But here we are with Seraphim Jinbei. A couple of things to note about Seraphim Jinbei. Number one, when we see the doors opening and the Seraphim Pod 04 behind him, we see at the top it says 98%. I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure Vegapunk mentions even in this chapter that they're very, very close to maturity, but they're not aged yet. He wants to age them up, but they're not quite there yet. And I kind of assumed he could age them up, but he hasn't yet because the government rushed him. But what does that 98% refer to? Is the Seraphim not complete? Was it not complete before it came out the tube? Or is that an active counter? I'm not entirely sure what that's referencing, but that'll be important. As well as on his right arm, he's kind of got bubbles like water on his arm. I guess that's just his blood flow. I don't really know what that is either, but that again seems very, very important. So now the crew has met a Seraphim. They know what a Seraphim is. They thought it was Jinbei because it is Jinbei, but not really. And they're even asking, how is this possible? Was Jinbei turned into a kid? And I love that because last chapter, yes, Jinbei was turned into a kid, but they didn't know that and he's already been turned back. So I think it's just really cool. It's kind of when Law got changed into female Law. And I was sitting there going, wait, is Ivankov around the corner? How did they manage this? But it was actually Doc Q and his Sick fruit. So there are other ways to achieve things in the One Piece world that we think that there's only one way to achieve, and that's very interesting to me as well. So during the fight here, Seraphim Jinbei kind of swims through the ground in a shocking moment of revealing Devil Fruit powers, which is really cool, and grabs onto Nami, and we get a zoomed in shot of him, and we see that he's also got those star-shaped eyes. The Boa Seraphim, I believe, had that one. So I'm assuming star-shaped eyes means an implanted Devil Fruit ability that wasn't there before. I'm not sure if we have any other examples of this that we could go off of. It's just that Boa Seraphim and this Jinbei Seraphim. The Mihawk Seraphim did not have the star-shaped eyes, probably indicating that he has some strengths that aren't Devil Fruit abilities. Mihawk does have those eyes, so it made a lot of sense to grab those things together. But Boa and Jinbei don't have these eyes, but their Seraphims do. So I'm assuming the star shape has something to do with a Devil Fruit ability has been transferred to this being. We do know that the Seraphim have multiple Devil Fruit abilities in them in a way, because they have the lasers through the Pika Pika no Mi, as well as Jinbei has his Swim fruit now. The Boa one, we didn't see use any Devil Fruit abilities as far as I'm aware, but this is probably the hint that's telling us that that Boa does have Devil Fruit abilities. But depending on when you take the lineage factor, would the lineage factor include the Devil Fruit? So if a warlord had a Devil Fruit, would their Seraphim inherently have that Devil Fruit? That would be terrifying, but very, very interesting. Nami gets grabbed here by Jinbei, and Sanji's having none of that. I think he goes full Ifrit Janbei because his leg looks very, very on fire right now, and he just kicks him in the face to save Nami. And one thing that's been really bothering me for the last couple chapters, I guess literally the last chapter in this chapter, is what's going on with Sanji's shirt? What is that? It's very weird. But this panel here makes a lot clearer to me, I think. I think he's got a hood. I think he is wearing a Hawaiian shirt, like a Hawaiian t-shirt, with a hood, which, I mean, fashion, sure, that's a little bit strange, but that makes so much sense than whatever was going on there before. So I assume he'll wear the hood at some point if it's there. But I'm pretty certain now that the thing that's been bothering me is the Hawaiian shirt has a hood, which is, it's kind of strange, but you know, why not? It is also really cool to see Robin weighing in on the fight. She goes straight to her Gigante Fleur, and so she uses Sea Serpent Snapdragon Fist, or Snapdragon Spank, rather, and it's really cool to see her using such a big technique that she used against Black Maria, and she's actually, you know, taking part in the fight and protecting her crew. It's not that she hasn't protected her crew before, but she's usually one of the last people to go into a fight with, like, a serious opponent. And Jinbei Seraphim with the Devil Fruit ability is a very serious opponent. So it's cool to see both Sanji and Robin weighing in here in the fight. It's quite cool. Another thing that was a bit unexpected is if you have the Swim Fruit, you can actually use the water around you as Fishman Karate, that's very cool. So Seraphim Jinbei scoops up some of the ground and is about to throw it. And I kind of wonder how that would go. Would it have the properties of water? When it gets far away enough from him, it should turn back into stone, right? But does it stay in the fluid kind of form it is? I have no idea. I assume because he's using Fishman Karate, it will stay in a fluid form, at least within a particular range around him. But I never really considered that with the Swim Fruit before, because Senor Pink kind of uses it to pass through walls, act really cool, and get really high up to do a suplex. So he didn't really use the ground too much, as far as I remember, in that fight, but a Fishman would know way better which one to use for that. Okay, so there was an SBS a while ago where somebody asked Oda what devil fruits the non-devil fruit using Straw Hats would use, and I thought I remembered Jinbei getting the Swim Fruit because that would make a lot of sense, but Jinbei would not get a fruit, obviously, because he's a fishman. But this Seraphim begs to differ, apparently. Not that he had much of a choice, and he actually gets what Sanji would have gotten, which is the Swim Fruit, which I didn't really consider at the time because it was attributed to Sanji and none for Jinbei, but the Swim Fruit is an insane devil fruit for a fishman to have. Yes, they can no longer really go back down to Fishman Island and they can't really go into water anymore, but they can use their swimming abilities and their Fishman Karate way more on land. They are not a water combatant anymore, but they are way stronger as a land combatant. So because they can still swim and they can swim really fast and they are incredibly strong, and they use Fishman Karate, which is with the shockwaves through the fluid in people's body and as well as other fluids. So it's a really, really good devil fruit match for a fishman that I just never really considered. So it's really cool that we get to see that here. Okay, so there's quite a big fight going on here where Jinbei is attacking Nami, Sanji hits him, and then Robin hits him, and then he's going after Robin. So then Usopp is going to save Robin, and then Usopp gets grabbed by Jinbei, and then Sanji's going to go save him, but then Frankie's going to save him. Okay, you got all that? Great, because we're moving on. And Sanji's about to come in and save him, and Frankie says, nope, don't worry, I've got this. I'll just shoot a radical beam at him, because why not? He wants to use that any chance he gets, so he's going to. And it's very, very cool because Edison, Vegapunk Edison, is watching this whole fight. He's collecting data, and Frankie fires a Vegapunk beam at him, and he's like, wow, what the hell is that? That's really cool. We weren't supposed to be doing that yet, but it's great that he can do that. So this is really interesting because this is Vegapunk seeing our Vegapunk technologist on the group actually using his technology for the first time. Because Lilith didn't take any notice of Frankie before on the outside when she saved the ship. And he was saying, hey, you know, I've spent 2 years on your island and I'm a huge fan of your technology. I've built all these things, and she just didn't really care, didn't listen to him. So it's very cool that Vegapunk is starting to see somebody using his technology, which is a really fun moment for Frankie. So here we have another Vegapunk being Vegapunk Edison, the flair of Vegapunk. So I'm starting to see a little bit more that he has split himself into these different satellites. I still think there's a main stellar body, and that is possibly active. It's looking less and less likely now that he's able to move, talk, invent, or even think. He might just be either gone or in, well, he's not gone because the main stellar body is still a thing, but not in the way that he can move around and exist and call dragon and stuff like that. Either he is incredibly engaged in something or literally unable to move is the only way I can really see this going from here. So Edison seems to be the really inventive, just draw the blueprints and like, oh, I had an idea kind of part of Vegapunk, which is really cool. I'm sure a lot of the parts, if not all of the parts of Vegapunk, have that kind of personality to them in some way, that they like inventing or they want to pursue research and invention. But it seems to be Edison's whole thing. All he really does is, while he's busy, shooting lasers at intruders or something, he goes, oh, I have an idea, and he rushes off to go and complete that. So it seems that Vegapunk really has done like a Harry Potter thing in making Horcruxes, and he split his soul into 6 different pieces to embody those different aspects of him fully. So Lilith is evil, and pretty much everything she says is evil. She has a little bit of a happier tone to her, but she's pretty evil. Edison is very inventive and very frantic and needs to quickly write things down, and I have to go and invent this, and I must capture this, which makes a lot of sense. And then we have Pythagoras, the wisdom, who can actually action a lot of those things, who's seemingly here looking at all of the data of the fight between the Seraphim Jinbei and the Straw Hat Pirates. So they seem very, very specifically invested in the things that they're doing, and they don't seem to have the broad view that Shaka seems to have, or Vegapunk himself would have, because they are very hyper-focused on their niche aspects of Vegapunk. Also, a cool little side note here, it's actually quite cute. My hands are always so full. At this point, I'd even take help from the cat. So this is when we were talking about this before. I think it was Kaku talking to Lucci saying, as busy as a beaver. But the Japanese translation of that is, so busy you give work to the cats, or something like that. I'll put up the actual one here. I just think it's really funny because he's got this little cat in a suit running after him. Meow, that's really cute. And he's just, I'm so busy I could give work to the cat to just kind of take some of the pressure off. So it's an old Japanese idiom that was referenced before, and now we see it literally here with Vegapunk. So it's kind of giving us the indication that this specific part of Vegapunk is so enamored with invention and, putting that idea out and trying to invent that thing that he's just conceived of, is just so incredibly busy, even compared to the other parts of Vegapunk. I'm sure they're all very, very busy, but this Edison part seems specifically weighted on that, given that he has the whole cat thing with the idiom. And here's where things get very strange. Edison is going to draw all these blueprints because the ideas are just coming to his mind. So he asks York, another part of Vegapunk, to eat for him. And I don't know, there's always that joke of like, oh, I'm so hungry. Can you go down to the kitchen and eat for me? Like, it's not the funniest thing, but yeah, it's a thing. But here, it's actually a thing. And York is just eating and eating and eating. And people are running around on this floor to bring them food. And this seems to be giving energy to the other parts of Vegapunk. I don't know if they specifically need the food or if they just have that desire to eat. So while Edison is working away doing the blueprints here, and while Pythagoras is going through this battle data and looking through all the interesting things that are happening, they still have needs and desires, it seems, because Edison wants to eat. He's hungry. He feels that he should be eating, but he doesn't have time. He needs to get these things written down right now. And Pythagoras is looking at all of this very interesting battle data that we'll get to in a second, so much so that he says, I really need to go to the bathroom. I would go myself, but I'm so busy. Hey, York, can you sort that out for me? And she does both. And that's pretty wild, because these bodies, these satellites, are connected, because Vegapunk would need to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom, so his satellites would need to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom because they're all connected, but somehow one of them can do all of those things for them while they're busy, which is ingenious. That's amazing. That's exactly what a head researcher should do, so he can not be interrupted while he's doing something very important and get those ideas down or get that data right in that moment that he needs it. But how does that work? What is their soul connection that actually allows them to go to the bathroom for one another, or take in nutrients for one another, or sleep for one another? it's very interesting, and probably the reason why Vegapunk has such a good idea on devil fruits is because he understands the lineage factor and the composition of the human body, or stellar body, or whatever body. He understands them to such a degree that he can outsource the need to sleep to another form of his body, which is, that's wild, but really cool. And what I'm so enjoying about this new arc is the depth we're getting into a character that we've known about for like 20 years and just never known anything about him, really. So it's quite fun. So let's quickly go over this battle data that Pythagoras is talking about here, about the Seraphim battle, because it's growing as it fights, which, that we all do. When we fight, we learn quite a lot. So the Seraphim's attack patterns have continued to develop as it grows. That suggests that one's lineage factor really does store some of our recollections and capabilities. That's very interesting. So your memories and your abilities are somewhat stored in your DNA. So that is going to lead very strongly into what devil fruits are, just because you need to know about the lineage factor to be able to influence these things. To be able to extract Kaido's devil fruit and make an artificial devil fruit out of it, you need to understand the lineage factor, which means lineage factor has a part to play in devil fruits. So when you eat a devil fruit, your actual DNA, your composition at a basic level is changed. And that's what's happened here. So we should try to accelerate their growth, although that presents new obstacles. Who knows what those obstacles are? Probably the ones that Caesar Clown is running into. And green blood concentration has risen, and heart rate is up to 90 beats per minute. So that's must have been what was in Jinbei Seraphim's arm, which is green blood. Does that mean that he's got red blood and then the green blood is also included? These are just the beginnings of a lot of things we're going to go into in this arc and just kind of get a lot more depth on. So after all that data is going through, we have Vegapunk going to the toilet. Not exactly what I thought we'd have in this chapter, but there it is. And we see that Desire, or York, has eaten a whole bunch of food and gotten like Luffy levels of fat, and then gone to the bathroom and then gone to sleep and shed all that weight somehow. And all three of them exclaim, "That hit the spot," or, are relieved, quite literally. And that's very weird because they're in very different locations, some of them geographically. I mean, we see York there and Edison and Pythagoras, and they're all fairly close together. And then we cut to Wrath, who's also, saying, "I've got to punch things to digest that properly," which that's very interesting because she didn't actually eat anything. As far as I'm aware here, it was York that ate all of those things. So she still has to digest despite not actually being the body that ate any of the food. And then York goes to sleep because York is the desire. York is, well, you're hungry, I'll go eat. You're tired, I'll go sleep. You need the bathroom, I'll go to the bathroom for you. That is the function of desire. Probably a few other things, which is, if I was Vegapunk, I'd also have made my desire section of my body a hot woman. That just sounds reasonable to me, but who knows? To each their own, I suppose. And York just kind of passes out, goes to sleep. Which apparently just works for all of the Vegapunks. So none of the other 5, possibly 6 Vegapunks need to sleep because this one Vegapunk is going to eat and sleep and do all those things constantly. And we know that because Dr. York's on today's 4th SDN cycle, and we'll leave that out for now, but this is the 4th time that York is doing this. Sorry, Dr. York. That Dr. York is doing this today. So this is seemingly all Dr. York does, is attend to the desires of Vegapunk and the Vegapunk satellites. So it is starting to make a lot more sense how all this fits together, and it's very, very cool. I'm now excited that we've set this kind of baseline understanding of how they interact and how we can actually play that off against a fight against CP0, an alliance with the crew, and how some of them will agree and some of them will disagree. Now that we've set a baseline of all these Vegapunks interacting in this kind of symbiotic relationship that they have designed, it's going to be very interesting to kind of play with that a little bit and go push it to the extreme. So it's a very cool basis for an arc, essentially. And then we have Shaka, the Logic, arriving. So now we have pretty much all of the satellites revealed, which is very cool and very fitting because this chapter is called The 6 Faces of Vegapunk. And anyway, we have Shaka arriving to talk to the Straw Hat Pirates. And I've been very excited for this. It's probably going to be next week that we actually get the proper reveal of what's going on here. And he just magnets everyone to the floor and tells the Seraphim to go back to its corner and think about what it's done. And he wants to actually talk to them. So in between all the talking here, something very, very unexpected and important happens here, where Frankie and Usopp are talking about how futuristic the place is and how amazing it is, and look at all this cool technology we have. And Vegapunk asks, do you think this island looks like it's from the future? And we've been introducing Egghead as the island of the future this whole time. So yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense that it would just be the island of the future. And Frankie says, yeah, you've got escalators and intangible ghost see-through doors and all of this amazing technology. And Vegapunk says, well, what if I told you there was an island about 900 years ago in the ancient kingdom with technology just like this one? And that blew my mind. That is huge. The implications of this are insane. So we knew before that the unknown so far ancient kingdom was technologically very advanced. My assumption is that they created devil fruits for a particular societal purpose, and they are just as a result of being an amazing technology, they've just been reincarnating for the last 900 years or so. And this is the confirmation that we needed before to really stick it together on just how advanced the ancient kingdom was. Because we have this giant mech that unfortunately looks like it got stabbed. Does that matter to a mech? Doesn't matter. This giant mech that is hundreds of years old, over 900 years old, that is way more advanced than probably the Frankie Shogun, because it's a much bigger robot with a much more complex kind of design to it in some ways, I'm assuming, for them to talk about it in this particular way. And it's just insane to me, and I'm using that word a lot, that the future island of Egghead is actually an island modeled on the past, meaning that everything that happened in the Void Century was to bring the world back down from a technological high and reset it to be easier to control by the world government. This has insane implications, and it's a really cool reveal. This is why I was saying recently that the crew was split up into the Sunny crew and the Luffy crew, because the Luffy crew are going to go somewhere and discover something really important, while the main crew are going to go meet Vegapunk and it's going to connect together. This is why I wanted to be doing weekly chapter reviews, but it's very cool to see that happening. And a very interesting thing is this giant mecha has horns. It has very similar to Kaido horns, as well as the left one being taken off. Not saying that this is Kaido. That would be a bit of a plot twist, though. That would be very cool. If Kaido somehow made it into this armor. Anyway, so the Ancient Kingdom both had amazingly advanced technology compared to the day today in One Piece, in whatever year we are, 1500 something. And Vegapunk has somehow made technology so much like this, and that's why everyone thinks he's 500 years ahead of the current timeline, when in fact, he's 900 years behind the current timeline, probably because he comes from the Void Century. So this has opened up a lot of doors. So there's a whole lot to talk about here, and so many different things that have now opened up because of what we've learned here. But I'm going to call it there for today, and just on the chapter review, lightly touch on all these things, and then delve a little bit more into these things as we go, so we have a better understanding for the next chapters that are coming up, as well as some in-between videos where we talk about specific topics. So, yeah, what a huge chapter. What great fun that really was. And I will see you guys on the next one. Cheers.